Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside the Issues, sponsored by the League of Women Voters. My name is Maureen Scalia and I serve as the moderator for these programs. Tonight I'm very happy to have with me two people who play important roles now in Richfield. On my immediate left is Maria Regan Gonzalez. She is the new mayor of Richfield, 6 months on the job now.
Yes.
And then next to her is Mary Supple. Mary Supple is the council member at large for the City of Richfield, also about 6-7 months on the job. Welcome and thank you. I know both of you are plenty busy,
yes,
so
thank you.
We really appreciate you being on the program. So I usually start out by letting my guests just talk about themselves as a introduction to the viewers. How did you get to be mayor, Maria?
Well, I worked for the city for 4 years, the City of Richfield, as a part of the public health department, and that's when I really learned about how amazing of a community Richfield was. And we were thinking of where we wanted to buy our first home and raise our family and start a family and really invest. And because of working in Richfield through the public health department, we said, let's go to Richfield. We fell in love with the diversity, the amazing feel that Richfield has, just so neighborly in that small town feel. And we bought our first home, and there was an opportunity to run for council. And, I hadn't really been involved in politics outside of voting and donating. But really, my passion is community health and public policy. So in my day job in public health, I really focus on those issues, which I think is a great asset to the position of city council at the time and now mayor. So that was really what sparked my interest in running for city council, was more of the great work that I could do to build a strong and healthy community in Richfield. And then unexpectedly, there was an opportunity to run for mayor, and I had just been in my council position for 2 years, which was pretty short. It was not even a full term. But these type of things aren't always at the exact time that you want them, and it happened, and I had to make a decision, and I'm really glad I did. And it's been a good 6 months, 7 months so far.
Yeah, and I guess you caught the state media's attention too, because of your background, your birth background, and do you want to share that at all? Anything about
there
that?
was a lot of interest in my mayoral campaign because I'm the first Latina in Minnesota's history that's ever been voted into the position of mayor. So that was pretty significant, and it was an honor, especially in Richfield, where there's so much diversity, and the Latino community is a big population in our student body and across the city. I think it's a great asset.
Yep. Okay, Mary, a lot of viewers may recognize you as a longtime school teacher, right, in the city? Mm-hmm. What drew you into deciding to run for the council?
Well, I am starting my 32nd year of teaching in Richfield, and I was really involved a lot in the teachers union and leadership that way, and then I decided, maybe it's time to step up and get involved in the city, because my dad was a county commissioner when I was growing up, and my mom was the town clerk, and so they always said you should give back to the community. So I decided to get involved, and I was on the HRA, the Housing Redevelopment Authority, and I decided to run when the position opened up for the at-large city council.
What HRA? A lot of people don't have any clue what the HRA does. Briefly, do you want to take some time and explain that?
So the HRA is the Housing and Redevelopment Authority, and we work on trying to encourage development and affordable housing and different things in Richfield. It's kind of a way to keep Richfield vibrant and healthy, and we look for opportunities that we can help with that.
A little bit of reinventing itself and remodeling itself almost. Mm-hmm. And I guess people know there's been a lot of activity over the last 10 years, once we got past the recession. Is that true?
Oh, there's a great deal of redevelopment. We have several apartment complexes that are coming online. I think the Chamberlain is the first huge apartment complex since 1971 on the east side. And so that is really awesome.
And that's the one along Cedar between 67th, maybe, 66th, and then 69th, approximately.
Yep. And I think they'll start opening up the first building on September 1st.
Yeah, they'll start leasing then.
They'll start
Okay,
leasing.
so that's almost done then.
We've had also a lot of increase in housing diversity, so there's been a lot of apartments, but there's also over 70 new townhomes that are going to be going on the other side of the Target area, in addition to apartments. And there's also been kind of move up housing, so bigger housing options through the HRA, where the city purchases substandard homes and clears the land and then provides opportunities to build these larger homes. So we're also looking at kind of housing diversity of price ranges, housing types, size, and a lot of that has been happening as well in Richfield, and the HRA has been a big part of that.
So that's amazing that when I was on the planning commission and when, the whole talk about that northeast corner there, the Target, the Best, or not Best Buy, Target and Home Depot. And there was always the plan to put in medium density housing along.
So it's happening. Yeah.
And so it's finally going to happen now.
Yes.
It took a long time, like over 15 years.
Yeah.
We're also looking at some commercial properties on Penn Avenue, and so that's going to be coming before the HRA and the City Council in the next couple of months, and the different development opportunities. So,
Can you say approximately where in Penn at all? Or is it too noon to
the
really?
HRA purchased the property where the bumper-to-bumper auto parts store was,
Okay.
and so now we're looking at different opportunities in that area.
Wow. Because that's a long time coming, too.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what will happen, or what the proposal is.
Well, as long as we're on redevelopment and new housing, we may as well, and we mentioned Penn Avenue, we may as well talk about the Novo. What is that, and exactly where is that?
So the Novo is off of Penn and 66 next to the CVS, behind the CVS. And so there's some homes there right now, but the project has been approved and it's market rate. I think that one is 100% market rate apartments that will be built there. And then there's also, there's been some ideas proposed through Lunds and Byerly's also to do an apartment complex that's something similar to what they have in Edina. They've been doing that model, looking at all of their stores and their sites to see how they can also incorporate housing. We don't have anything, we don't have a solid proposal submitted yet, but they've had a couple community meetings to get input from residents on that project.
So, obviously Edina's going great guns on York. It's a new one every other day, it seems like. But this will be great for Richfield too, because we really don't want to fall behind, and the demand is there.
Well, and we just finished the Havenwood opened up, and that's senior housing.
Yes.
And there's the EMI project that's coming on 66th Street that's going to be mixed use, that's both commercial and residential.
And that's going to be, I want to say 5th Avenue, 66th and 5th.
Stevens and I think
First.
Stevens and First.
Oh, Stevens and
off
First,
of
it's further
66.
west than I was thinking.
We also have some condos, very high scale condos, and then apartments, market rate apartments with some affordability at the Lake Winds Garden site. Lindale Gardens, sorry. Lake Winds is there, and the Lindale Garden site.
Now, I know the ones along Lindale, those are going to be apartments, right?
They'll
With
be
some
apartments.
portability in that. What, 20, 30% are we talking about?
I think those are 20%
It's
affordability.
10 to 20%.
Yeah.
Somewhere's in there. And then I noticed, do I see something going on the north side of Richfield Lake? I just walked around it
Yes.
Saturday. Is that where those condos
Yes.
are going to be? They've got a nice view.
Yeah, very
Yes.
nice. Yep.
So.
And then there's going to be some commercial that's going to be added on that property still. So right now they're working on the apartments and the condos, and then next is going to be some commercial spaces. And I think the developer, we just had a discussion a few weeks ago, and they're interested in looking at that space for some uses that we don't have a lot of in Richfield. And one of the folks in the condos that is going to be moving in is an artist, and so they're interested in some of the space being art space. They're looking at maybe small business and startup businesses too. So hopefully there'll be some new uses that we don't have yet.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, another area that's been sitting kind of there for a while. That I mean, it's been a while since Linda Garden closed.
Yeah.
But that whole area is now undergoing. You know, I know it's change, and change is hard for people, but we need to attract more people to Richfield, and that's one way to do it. And there's such a demand. I mean, people want to be. It's not like the people my age who wanted to be as far out as they could, a lot of people, but the young people want to be closer in, I think.
Well, and that's why programs like Richfield Rediscovered that Maria was talking about, where you take a substandard home and replace it with something that's move-up housing, is a good thing. And then we have transformation home loans
Yeah,
that
that's
are
nice.
there to help people remodel their homes. And another program, we recently, in the last couple of years, started something called the Economic Development Authority. And through that EDA, there are first-time homebuyer down payment assistance programs.
Yeah.
Because we have a big disparity in home ownership, and so we want to try and make sure that everybody gets a chance to move in to their own home. If you're paying $1,200 in rent, you might as well be paying $1,200 in a mortgage.
Yeah.
So if we can help people make that down payment and start building up generational equity, it does a lot towards building equity in the community.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was either hearing or reading about that whole issue of equity in terms of getting into. There's a heck of a lot of people up there that had parents able to loan them money for the down payment, or even outright give it to them, so they could get their foot in the door.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who even are, professionals,
Yeah.
but don't have parents able to give them that initial loan or gift.
Well, if your parents have been renting their whole lives, they haven't built up equity in a house, so you can't transfer that wealth to the next generation.
Yes.
And so we're trying to figure out a way to give people the opportunity to build up that equity and own their own home.
Yeah, because that holds people back. And like you say, I mean, when I look at rental for a two-bedroom, my goodness, you're absolutely right. They may as well be paying for a mortgage.
And
And probably the income is there.
Yeah.
It's just that
Yeah.
initial down
Yeah.
payment that.
Yeah, and there's some perceptions that maybe renters aren't as invested in a community where they live, or it's easy to find another place to rent. But really, home ownership is just, for the reasons that the two of you were talking, is out of reach for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and it is really a much more affordable option. But it's being able to get that money for the down payment, making sure your credit, is also, you have your strong credit. And then there's bidding wars all over right now, especially in Richfield for homes. So it's very competitive. And that directly impacts our schools. We want to make sure that the students in our schools have housing stability, so that we're
Yes.
not losing our children in our school system. And so we want to make sure we're doing several things. And another thing that we've done in addition to all these other programs is called the Kids at Home program. So if you have kids in the Richfield schools, and there's a few different qualifications for Kids at Home, it is subsidy for your rent. And so we really have a range of different programs for people who want to move up and grow their home and do this move-up housing, for people who want to renovate their home and their homeowners, all the way to folks who need subsidy for their rental units, to landlords who want to improve the facades of their apartments. We're really trying to find multiple tools to help people call Richfield home from all different backgrounds.
Yeah, and as I look, even my experience as a kid growing up on a farm, and my kids' experience, there was never any thought that they wouldn't. I mean, they'd go through basically the same school system for all 12 years. But unfortunate for renters, that's a debatable issue.
Right.
And yet, I mean, study after study has proven that if you can keep a kid in at least 4 years in the school system, it makes a big difference. And I'm sure you see that too.
Well, and as Maria said, the renters are committed to Richfield. They want to stay in Richfield, but we have a 1% vacancy rate.
Right.
So if somebody sells an apartment building and everybody has to move, it's hard for people to find a place to come back to, because they really are committed to staying in Richfield if they can.
Yeah.
1%, that's incredible.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean 1% of what's within what you need. It's 1% period. So maybe that's a mix of 1 bedrooms, but you really need a 2 bedroom or a 3. Maybe you need something more affordable and there's only market rate. I mean, it's 1% vacancy period, not that doesn't account for what you actually need. And something we've been really looking at a lot more because of the great work of Judy Moe and RDAP, the Richfield Disabilities Advocacy Partnership, is when you look at available housing that's accessible for residents with disabilities, it's basically zero. It's very, very limited. So these are things that the city and the council and the community are looking at too.
Yeah.
We were very excited when the Chamberlain we said is coming online. They have 15 accessible units. And so that is something that's important. And now whenever a developer comes, we ask them about accessibility. And do they plan to put it into their development?
You know, it almost takes either a remodel or a new, because our apartments are old. I mean, they're 50s, 60s, maybe some 70s, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I know a lot of our apartments, because way back when, were always considered, these were people didn't have kids so much. And that we have a lot more 1 and 2 bedrooms, but very few 3 bedrooms, correct?
Yeah. And that's in Richfield, but that's also across the metro area.
The first ring and even second ring.
Yep.
So are we trying to attract 3-bedroom places, or is that an issue? Obviously, you can build, 2 bedrooms and a amount of space that would hold 3.
Some of the new developments have 3 bedrooms in them.
They're pretty limited. We do talk about that, and we always bring it up as a council, but it's not a number that it's the 3-bedroom seems to not be something that a lot of developers
Want
invest in a lot. So they do have some.
And probably because you don't make the money off it. A lot of 3 bedrooms compared to 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as I was looking at things, one of the statistics that really hit me is that we seem to be okay in the 30 to 80% of medium income, but we need less. And can you want to address that issue?
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, I think it's 50 to 80% where we're good, and we're not so strong in the 30%. Is that correct?
Over 30% we're strong. It's the
over
30 or below.
30 and under. Okay. So we had a study session, a joint study session recently with the Housing Redevelopment Authority and the City Council, and staff shared that we're very strong in affordability in those middle affordability ranges of area median income, but deeply affordable and higher end is where Richfield is really lacking. And so that's something that they came to us and said, what do you want to do with that? Are you interested in working in both areas in one? What type of approach would you like to take? And I think that was a preliminary discussion, and I think we had kind of differing opinions and options on that. And I think we'll keep talking about it.
So some of the new development will take care of the higher end part of it, but we're going to have to keep strategizing ways to do the deeply affordable things and find out ways. Because it might be somebody that is working as a paraprofessional in a school district and is working full time, but it's not a high paid job.
And that's the big problem. People are working, but the income is not enough to really be able to afford much.
Correct.
And that kind of housing maybe almost require a nonprofit to help sponsor that, or kick in money for that kind of thing. I'm thinking of Beacon and some of those groups.
There is a group that has applied for some grant funding to try and get a spot where the old city garage was that
Oh,
would
that's
have
right. We
supportive
still have
housing.
some of that area open. How big is that? That's
Oh, I don't know. how
about a
big it is.
block, is that? Or is that half a block?
I'm not sure the exact size.
The proposed unit is 50. It's a 50
50.
apartment complex, 50 units. It's not huge.
No,
It's not that big.
but it would have like supportive services and ways to help people, and there'd be accessible units for people, and it would address that area that's up to 30% of the median income.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
That would be really good. And then he came across the 4D classification. I don't get that. What is 4D?
So 4D is a federal tax classification that developers can qualify for if they're getting any type of city assistance, and it greatly reduces their property taxes connected to levels of affordability that they're providing.
So that means the city would get less tax money from that kind of, so that
was-
both ways there.
That was the discussion that the
Yep.
council and the HRA had, is that you want to make sure that you're getting what you're putting into it. If you're giving them a tax break, we want to make sure we are ensuring that the affordability goes on for say 10 to 15 years, and that it maybe hits those deeply affordable needs that we have, so it's not just a giveaway. We're not into doing a
Yep.
taxpayer giveaway. We want something
Yep.
that benefits the
Yep.
community.
Yeah.
The discussion in general at the session was very much, this may not be a mechanism that works really great for us and achieving the goals that we want. And so, maybe if it is something we end up using, like Mary said, it should be tied to very specific types and affordability that we really might not be able to reach, that is not going to have that huge tax, that huge impact on us, but really just to get a tax break for a developer, that's not what we're interested in. So
No, we're not subsidizing.
Yeah,
developers.
exactly.
And all those discussions are very, very preliminary.
Yep. This was the first discussion of multiple discussions. Yeah, and we welcome community members to come and attend and listen to the study sessions. Also, if you can't make it or you don't want to come to the meeting, you can always email. Mary is the chair of the HRA or any of the council members, and that feedback gets read, and the council members and the HRA members do ask those questions to staff, make sure that gets put in the record. So it's a great way, whether you want to attend or not, or you can or not, it's a great way to get involved in those sessions.
Yeah, because I know, having been on the planning commission and just kind of knowing, I know people are so busy, but if they really want to have an impact or say on what goes on, they really do need to pay attention and show up from time to time, or at least listen or do the research online too. I mean, it's amazing how much information it's out there just looking at the council work session agendas and then the minutes. I mean, you really can find out a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and at this last work session, members of the Housing Coalition did come and watch and ask questions and participated. So it's open to everyone. So we would really welcome people to come.
And this is kind of a side note that's related, but I am just really excited for our new council. We have Mary Supple, Ben Whalen, Simon Troutman, Edwina Garcia, and myself. And it's just been so neat in this new year. Everybody, all the council members are out and about constantly in community. And Mary has a long-standing history in our schools as well as the community, so she's really bringing that relationship and connection and direct experience with the schools, which is great. Ben is very much connected to renters as well as faith-based communities in Richfield. Simon is very passionate about working with refugees, immigrants, and small business owners. And we all know Edwina Garcia has been a long-standing leader in our community. So it's just really cool to see our council so active. And I know every single council member and myself, we're really out there listening, asking for folks to get involved, because we do say this over and over again. We want to hear from people. We want them to be involved. We want to be out in the community, not just expecting people to come to the council chambers. And that's one of the things I really do appreciate about this council is they're very engaged and excited to be in community.
And energetic, I think.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's going to bring me back. We kind of got into housing a little bit ahead of what I was thinking, but that's just fine. I bring up that you guys some of you are kind of new at this, and so far, what's been the most satisfying part of your new career, job?
I think it's just been fun finding out about different parts of the city and meeting new people. And I get the most engaging phone calls. Like, there was a lady that was 90 years old that called me up to give me some information to share with the council. And it was great information. It was something I didn't know, so I shared it. But I got to hear her story of Richfield. And it's just been fun engaging with the people and all the residents of Richfield and finding out more about the community and all the hidden gems that I didn't know about.
How about you?
I would say mine is pretty similar. My favorite thing about being in this position is just the opportunity to constantly connect with residents, get to know folks. I mean, we are literally, Mary and I are neighbors, but we're just each other's neighbors. We're just residents in Richfield. We have full-time jobs, and we really care about getting to know our community, our neighbors, hearing people's stories. And when residents have ideas and solutions and we're able to put those things into action, people sometimes are so surprised, and we're like, yes, this is how we want local government to be. Or when people have complaints or concerns and they bring it up and we're able to support them in addressing those, that's why, I ran. That's the most satisfying thing, is to just support people, whether it's on an individual basis or to work together as a whole community, the school district, our businesses, our neighborhoods, our city, and bring everyone together to say, what does the future of our community look like? Who do we want to be? And let's get involved in making that happen together. That's awesome. I love it.
Well, and there's so much enthusiasm. Like, every time we open it up for commissions and ask for volunteers, we get more people than we have spots for. And so it's a wonderful dilemma to have, because everybody is really wanting to be involved.
It's exciting.
Do you sense, now maybe you're too young, but maybe Mary and I can talk about it a little bit more, but do you sense that the 20, 30-year-olds now versus the maybe 40, 50-year-old group are just more willing to get involved? And I mean, I sense that the younger people really want to make things happen and want to make, changes.
I don't know about any demographics, but I do know across the board there are an awful lot of people that are really interested in becoming part of it. And you are correct, there are a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds that want to just make an impact and be involved.
I just think that's, somebody my age, that's just so refreshing. I mean, there's some young people out there that are taking charge, taking responsibility, and just, it bodes well for the future.
Well, and something that I think is so important, as leadership in the community is always changing, but we see it in Richfield. We have such a strong history of amazing community leaders, including the League of Women Voters, and many, many powerful women from our baby boomer generation who did so much and are still doing so much. And I think as people get involved, leadership changes. That's just life anywhere. But making sure that we're always building those connections, learning lessons, and relationships across generations is super important, because we shouldn't be starting from zero and experimenting the same thing over and over again. We really need to pass that knowledge, the wisdom, sometimes I think it can be easy to be afraid of change or to be defensive if we might not see people like ourselves in any situation, but say, hey, we have a diversity of ideas and leadership. We all are in this community together, and let's use it as an asset and work together. So I just am always very thankful for the leadership of the league and the amazing women, because I just feel so fortunate that we've had awesome women to really follow and to get advice and support from.
Yeah, I think of some of those that have recently, passed in the last few years, and what an impact they had. So it's so wonderful to see the new leadership coming forth. What has been the most challenging? I'll start with you on that one.
I would say the most challenging thing is just managing people's expectations of myself in the role, or maybe any one of us in council. Or the city. There's situations that, the city council and the mayor, we're we're part-time. The majority of us have full-time jobs and families, and we also, our roles are very specific to making policy and keeping at that big picture level, not the day-to-day with our staff. And so depending on what city you live in, your city council works differently and looks different. Some, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Duluth, they have full-time city council members and mayors with staff. So sometimes trying to just, trying to remind myself and others, I can't be, and we can't be everything for everyone, but what can we do, and how can we be really supportive and take strong leadership within the scope of our role? So sometimes it's education, sometimes it's being kind to myself and saying, you know what, if you can't do that, it's okay. And it's just working together as a team to make sure we're all getting our needs met.
I would say there's been a huge learning curve. I had the background on housing and redevelopment, but I didn't know much about transportation. And so I've been learning a great deal on the Transportation Commission as their liaison, and in the whole budgeting process, learning how that works. And Richfield's fortunate in that we have a great city staff, and they can bring us up to speed and give us the information we need so that we can make those policy decisions. But there is a big learning curve. I mean, transportation has a huge effect in the city of Richfield. It's
location.
Yes,
absolutely.
Speaking of transportation, do we want to talk a little bit about our streets and the ongoing work and all the cones that are all over the place? I have to say, I was in the little initial part of the 66th Street project. But I have heard people just say, it's beautiful.
Oh, good.
How has that turned out? What do you think about it?
It's been wonderful watching it as it develops. And I know I went along on the bike ride with the mayor a couple weeks ago. And just to think back to when the sidewalk was right up against the street and you felt like you were going to get run over by a bus, to now having a dedicated bike path and safe ways to cross at the roundabouts and all the different things. So it's come a long way. And I do think if you cross town like in 76th and 77th versus 66th, the roundabouts are helping with the traffic. I can get across town much more efficiently, and there's not as many backups. So as the things are coming online, it seems to be working very well. So
yeah, I've noticed that. You know, not to have to sit there and wait for a light to change, or they turn arrows first and then the light to change. I know people are a little touchy-feely about those roundabouts, but
So Mary and I live close to each other. So we live right off of Portland Avenue and pretty close to 66th. But I love it because I know it's such a change for folks, definitely. But when we talk about things we can do to keep that small hometown, urban hometown feel, the roads absolutely give that. It kind of reduces the traffic and all the congestion with cars. It makes it less scary. It puts, trees and greenery and medians for people who are crossing. It's much safer. You have people biking. I'm always seeing more people biking, pushing strollers, walking. With our bike event, we had 40 people on 66 just zooming down
Wow.
safely, following the signals, doing a great job. Right next to traffic. And so I think when we think about how do we keep the things we care about most as a community, that urban, hometown, small, neighborly feel, the way that we're redoing our roads is really contributing to that. So I think it's great. And again, it's about all working together as a whole community to meet our needs and what we have to face together now, but also in the future. So one of the things that we're doing is September, we're announcing it as Roundabout Safety Awareness Month.
I saw that.
So, because we've had so many concerns, especially from our senior community members who live right by the Lindell, and roundabout, saying it's dangerous to cross and it's difficult. And there are people zooming through the roundabouts. There are people not paying attention. There are people who are coming in to traffic as pedestrians or bikers, and maybe the cars aren't stopping, and it's very scary. We haven't had an accident yet, but I think there's been many close calls, and people are coming to the council, and the council said, we agree. We need to do something to make sure to educate the whole community. So we're going to kick that off in September, where we're actually going to have activities for drivers, pedestrians, bikers. We're going to talk about disability issues in crossing. We're going to be working with our schools to make sure that our students who are driving are well aware. We're going to be working with the driver's education classes, with seniors in housing complexes. So we really want to get into that next phase, because we want to make sure we're doing the education and we're all kind of playing our piece as a community to navigate the changes that these roundabouts are bringing.
Yeah, and I think people just really need to remember that they don't need to cross the street all at one time, that they really only need to get across half of it, and then they can stop and then cross the other half. As I talk to people, I know that's the big thing, is I've got to say, stop. You only need to cross half of it at a time, not the whole thing.
And another thing that I've seen too is some, pedestrians do have the right of way, but you have to stop and make eye contact. So a car too might pass. Yeah. But you should really should wait till you make that eye contact with the car and they stop, and then you can cross. But some people get frustrated that right as they start to cross that the cars aren't stopping.
Yeah. And some of it's just common sense. I mean, I just got really scared. I mean, I saw as I left my house these two boys. One was on a skateboard and one was on a surfboard kind of thing, like going to practice going down, surfboarding down skiing hills, I guess. And so, okay, I was real aware of it. Then all of a sudden, I only saw the one. And then I realized one of the kids was flat on his stomach, low to the ground. And I thought, oh my goodness, if I hadn't seen him
Did he fall?
No, he was scooting, belly surfing.
Oh my gosh.
On the street. So I think we've got to get the word out to parents and kids that there are some. Kids don't necessarily think.
Right.
And, we really, but that scared the living daylights out of me, right in the center of the street.
And I see drivers using the roundabouts improperly all the time, and speeding, and so there's a lot of different things, but I do think we're going to keep working and making it a focus.
And I think, I almost see the businesses just kind of starting to upgrade and paint and whatnot. I mean, now that they've got a beautiful thing out front, they need to beautify themselves a little bit. So
Yeah. One thing that I'm actually going to bring up in one of our next sessions is when I was at the National Night Out and everyone was having their picnics, we all went out, and I had a couple residents say, what are we doing to put trash cans along the bikeways and the new walkways on all of the roads? We don't necessarily, I haven't seen them. And so we now have all these trails where there weren't before, and so we do have pedestrians and people walking and biking, but we don't, I am curious to know if there's a plan that goes along with that for those type of things too, that you don't think about. So they have said, I live right on the walkway and I have garbage now, litter from people walking.
And I think, I don't know, I always picked up litter in the streets. I think it's just a matter of the, hey folks, you know, if you see something, pick it up. But it's better if there is something within a block that they can put. Now, a new street being done, I mean, obviously we can talk about Lindale. I'm sure the people around Lindale are about ready to pull their hair out. But we've got a new one coming, and that's 65th between Lindale and Nicollet.
So one of the things that the city has been trying to do is do long-term planning. So if you know that, say, the hub might be redeveloping in the next couple of years, that you do all of the infrastructure ahead of time so that you don't redo a street and then rip it up 2 years later. You want to like make sure that the water lines and the gas lines and the sewer and the electrical is all done. And so the idea is to make sure that that's ready to go so that if and when the hub redevelops, that it'll be ready to support that. And they want to take time to get input from the neighbors and all of that community participation so it can be well designed.
And I hope I know I went to first or second, I can't remember now, but I hope the residents there participated well.
Yeah.
They've been showing up.
There has been really good participation at the open houses.
Good.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's another project that will be in the works. So we've kind of redone Portland. We're massively redoing Lindale. Is Nicollet going to stay like that for a while, or are there plans for Nicollet?
I believe Nicollet and Penn are county roads, and so we have to work together with the county because that's got to be budgeted by them.
Oh, okay.
And it's like I said, it has to do with long-term planning. Like we've been doing the mill and overlay for several years now, so that the whole city's roads are taken care of and that they last longer. And Richfield's known for having well-constructed roads. So somebody 30 years ago put a really solid base, so it has saved the taxpayers money over the years because we haven't had to keep replacing them.
Great. Well, what else do I have on my list? Organized recycling, kind of stemming from the organized or the organic recycling. It's not organized yet. But let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, I know the League's real interested in that.
Well, you were on the task force, so we had a task force that was focused, and I was the council liaison, focused on researching and investigating organics collection, so organics material, food waste, that goes into our waste system that can be diverted in reducing greenhouse gas and pollution and emissions, and also be contributing to making compost for things like gardening and food. So it really meets multiple goals and is really, a lot of cities across the country have been doing it for a while. And Richfield was really interested. We piloted a program with our residents where people could start collecting, and we provided bags and education, and we really made it a community initiative. And we saw a lot of success. So it wasn't curbside pickup, but what it was there was bins across the community, the city, where people could go and drop off. And I don't remember the final number. Do you remember? Of
700.
700 people participated in that, households participated in that program, and it was very successful. And we thought we might see drops in the winter, quite a bit of drop, but we didn't. We had consistent participation from residents. So that was kind of, so this group was the community group that got together to research it. They came to the city council recently and recommended a couple different options. And one of the options, the option that the city council ended up going with is to look at putting RFPs out to the haulers to say we're interested in organized recycling, because we're, I think, 2 of over the 40 cities in Hennepin County who don't have organized recycling and our recycling rates are pretty low. So bundling those two things together and then opening it up to have, whether it's one or a couple contractors, we'll be looking at a competitive bid process for the organized recycling and for organics collection.
And yeah, I mean, I don't think the public understands that almost a third of our waste is organic and could be made into compost instead of going into landfills or being burned.
Yep.
And I think there's an appetite for it, because I know when I was talking, we were knocking on doors in apartment buildings and asking people what they wanted and how the city could help them. And that came up a lot. They wanted to do the organics recycling. And
awesome.
So I think there is a strong appetite for it.
And I think, if I'm right, I can say that the Hennepin County is going to be demanding that we have it in a year or 2 or 3.
So that's a really good point. So one of the impetuses for starting this organics collection process and investigation was because the county is changing their rules and regulations for all cities within their jurisdiction on recycling. So we need to think about that as well.
Yeah. Well, another, and the organization of trash over in St. Paul has created an issue and has to go to the ballot. Now, for just us doing organized organic and recycling organized, we don't have to worry so much about that.
Yep, there's a separate, very specific process outlined for moving to organics trash hauling than there is for organics collection and recycling. And so we've been working very closely with our city attorney to make sure that we're following the process, policy and procedures around that, but it is not the same process necessary for organized trash hauling.
Okay, good, good. Because after reading the headlines in the newspaper the last couple of days, I thought, oh my goodness, are we going to look at that?
Yeah.
Great, great. Let's see. Let's talk about Richfield Disability Disability Awareness Project. Now, Judy Moe, I know, has been a big mover and shaker on that issue. Has the City Council been involved with that, or do we need to know about that?
I've attended a couple meetings just so that I could become aware of it and find out what the group was about and what they're interested in. And I think part of it is just to make sure that the voice of the disability community is heard. And I think people have good intentions, but you don't know what you don't know, and so we all need education and awareness, and they've been a strong advocate for that. I don't know if you want to add more.
Yeah, they've been doing great work over the past year. I think it's been over a year now, or close to a year that they've been working, and so some of the things that they're really passionate about is making sure we're looking at our city policies, processes, procedures, programs. I know our website is not accessible, so we're looking at making sure that our website is accessible. Looking at our parks, so we're going to have an all-inclusive park for children with, autism and different sensory issues. And so really just looking at all different ways that the city and local government, but also the community, our businesses, our families in general, are much more welcoming, inclusive, and friendly to community members with disabilities. And I know even though by federal law with the ADA that is a right of every person with disabilities to have the same opportunities, services, and access as folks without disabilities has, that's really not how it ends up working. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can as a city and a community. But this is relatively a new focus and issue for the city and even the community, and we're very thankful to Judy and the RDEP group. But we also have a long way to go. So we're looking at our housing, our community development, our parks and recreation, communications, but we have a lot of work ahead of us also.
And
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, it could be things like for Red, White, and Blue Days. Once it was brought up, they made sure they publicized where the disability, the accessible parking was, Because if you're having to drive around and try and figure out that, and if it's just clearly posted, this is where you have accessible parking and these are the things that you can do, that helps so people can become a part of the community and part of like Red, White, and Blue Days and go to all the events.
Well, I even stopped to think about that as I watched the street dance and everything going on. You know, I hate to say it, but porta potties are not accessible if you have disabilities. Now we do have the ice arena open during that. Well, I don't know if the ice arena is open for the fireworks, so per se. And you know, even something as basic as that, you don't stop and think about. And I was many years on the 4th of July committee, and no one ever brought that to attention, and you know, none of us had the issue to deal with, so it's kind of forgotten.
Well, they worked really hard to make it accessible this year because of the information that they got and the feedback they got of what they could do.
Great. That's just so wonderful.
And another thing I really appreciate about the work that Judy and Raven, her daughter, do, and as well as RDEP in general, is they're very much focused on supporting community members to grow their own leadership. So a lot of members from RDEP have come for the first time to council meetings. They've spoken, they've shared comments, questions, concerns, issues at the public hearing, and they've been a part of that. They've shown their support on affordable housing. They've chimed in on work sessions. So I think right now we need people to get involved more than ever. It's so important to have resident engagement, and that's one of the things that RDEP is doing in a community where we really are lacking being more supportive and doing better with our representation. She's helping do that. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of did that for the schools. We included the special needs kids. And now it's time for us to get with it as far as the city is concerned.
And I like that RDEP is focused on finding solutions.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So it's very much a positive, let's figure out a solution, let's work together and collaborate and find a way to solve this.
And as long as we're talking about the accessible park, there's a fundraising effort going on that. Do either one of you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so now at our liquor stores, community members can round up to the closest dollar to donate to our accessible park update. And I think we've raised over $10,000 now.
I know, it's just amazing.
And we've never done roundup, so I just am super excited. It's a direct, concrete, specific way somebody can contribute to one of the greatest assets we have in our community, our parks and recreation services that people love and we're really known for. People can just donate 20 cents here, 30 cents here, less than $1 at any one time. And it's a new source of income that's really making an impact and difference. So it's been so successful.
Well, and I think it's another example of citizens, again, participating in, it's not just the city council's city.
Yeah,
it's our city, and that brings with it responsibility to make things happen.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, that's great. Another kind of beginning to get momentum, maybe coming out of the organics recycling thing, is sustainability. And even talk about a sustainability commission. Any thoughts on yours? Just off the top, I know it's very preliminary.
I think it's an excellent idea, and we're looking at hiring someone to be like a sustainability person in the city that's working on that, and they'll help develop the commission, because we have to think long term. It's like somebody said back in the 1880s, there was someone said, if you chop down all the trees, you're not living off the interest, you're eating into the principal. And we need to remember that now, more than 100 years later. We need to be sustainable. We have to live off the interest. We can't just use up all our resources and then throw up our hands in the air.
Any idea of what that kind of things are talk? I know the city is doing some things for energy savings. That's beginning to get a bit. So you want to talk about that part of that?
So just going back quick to the Sustainability Commission piece, so there's been a group of residents very interested and engaged in sustainability, and some of them were involved in the organics task force collection. and they have been talking to the city about a commission for a while, but there's cities across the country that have commissions that have climate action plans, and these are things that we don't have yet. So again, it's starting to lay the foundation and the groundwork to make those things happen. And sometimes you got to address the most immediate issues, and that recycling in organics was a huge need because it's a mandate coming from Hennepin County, and an area where we really are not doing well at all. So we focused on that. But then our Parks and Rec director has in her work plan for 2020 to get that Sustainability Commission, start researching, get it up and going, and identify kind of the scope of the work of the commission. But we don't have a plan, a sustainability plan, but we do have several departments that do different things, you know, using less ice in our public works and how we do our plowing, to solar panels and electric cars and those type of things. So we are doing a lot of things as a city.
And just real quickly, the ice arena is, how should we put it? It's out of date.
Yeah.
I guess it's about the best way. The refrigeration is no longer even being manufactured, I think, and the parts and pieces and the mechanics that make that all work are not even available or supported.
Correct.
Do you want to just mention that that's a big topic coming up too?
Well, one thing that was fortunate is when the airport added different runways and we had to close down the golf course, that money was set aside to be used as a reserve, and that's going to help pay for a lot of the changes that we're going to need as we switch over the refrigeration, because the current refrigeration system is harmful to the ozone, and so the EPA has said it can't be manufactured anymore, and so it's going to cost more and more to use to buy that dwindling supply. So it's the time that is now that we should do the switch over. It also would have allowed some opportunities, since we have 2 ice sheets, that we could also, some of the cities around the US have like a dry floor option too, where when one of the ice sheets is taken up, and you can have activities in there on just like I don't know if it's turf or sand or whatever it is. So there's all kinds of opportunities. So we're going to be looking for community input and get information out to people in the next couple of months as we make the decision about that.
Well, we're running out of time, and we didn't talk about budget. So we're saying it's coming up. Is there a time for citizen input into the budget?
So right now, tomorrow we will have a study session on our budget. So tomorrow night folks can come, and all the information is online, and hear about the projections. Our department heads are going to come and talk to us about their projections for 2020. And then they will present the final budget in September. And folks usually come around December for their truth and taxation hearings, is when people usually come. But if people really want to learn a little bit more about the projected budget, they can come tomorrow night.
Okay. Well, on that note of money, I think we have to say good night. So I just want to thank you again, Maria and Mary, our mayor and our council person at large, for being on the program. It's been wonderful. I hope our viewing audience has learned some things. And to our viewing audience, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.